Hey everyone, in this week's video I'm going to be doing a review of the BetaFPV Beta75x. First thing I'm going to do here is do an unboxing so you can see what the Beta75x comes from factory with. Quick note, on the back of the box they indicate what radio receiver as well as the type of connector for batteries you have. And again, it's the Beta75X2S. So once we get the box open here, we can see it comes with a few things. The first thing here is a set of spare props. In case you break one, you don't have to wait to order new ones. It also comes with a spare canopy. So if the stock canopy breaks, again, nice and easy to replace that. I chose to go with the PH 2.0 connectors, so they've included two LiPo high voltage batteries with it as well. From factory they come charged at about 4 volts. I believe they've done that so you can fly it right out of the box without having to charge it. Just to be safe though, I would recommend tossing them on a charger just to top them up before you fly them. Again, these are LiPo HVs. They go up to 4.35 volts. The frame's nice and small. It's a pretty cute looking frame. I think that's the most accurate word to describe it. Here you can actually see the FrSky XM Plus antennas just dangling from the back. There's a nice little gap right above the battery board. And here are the PH2 connectors, designed to allow you to use two 1S LiPos in parallel. Next, we'll dive into how to bind this to your transmitter. Since I selected the FrSky version, binding it is fairly straightforward. I just went ahead and cloned an existing model I had, went down to the internal RF, set it to D16 mode, and held down the bind button on the XM Plus while plugging in the second battery. Once that was done, I selected bind, and that was it. After binding the Beta75X, I connected it to my tablet and using the Betaflight configurator, just inspected on the receivers tab that all the sticks and switches were connected to the right channels. And then once that was done, I went over to the modes tab and configured all the different modes. I use pre-arming, so that was one of the things I wanted to make sure was configured before I tested it. Next, I clamped it down to my bench and then went ahead and just did a throttle test just to make sure that all the motors were working. Once that was done, I wanted to weigh it just to see how much it weighed by itself, as well as with some of the batteries I planned on using. I weighed it with a Tattoo 450 2S battery, as that was the XT30 connector style battery I had, as well as the two stock batteries that it came with. All in, I found it's anywhere from 54 to 70 grams, depending on the type of battery. Because I ordered the PH 2.0 connector version, and I have quite a few XT30 batteries laying around, I decided to do a quick teardown to solder on some XT30 connectors. What I noticed is everything is connected very, very easily. The camera is connected by a nice little set of pins. There's very little soldering that's required to detach or reattach everything. I also went ahead and added some zip ties to the FrSky receivers and heat shrinked them on just to make sure that during crashes or anything like that, it didn't get snagged in any of the props or anything like that. Here you can see the XT30 connector at the bottom along with the PH 2.0 connectors. And I just arranged the radio receiver antennas at 90 degrees to each other, so no matter what the orientation was, I would have a nice clean signal. After adding the XT30 connector as well as the zip ties, I wanted to test to see how much the weight increased. What I found was everything went up by about 5 grams, from 54 to 70 grams up to 60 to 75 grams. Now that everything was set up and it was ready to fly, I decided to do a few test flights with a few different battery configurations just to really understand how it flies. What I really liked about the Beta75X is that it's lightweight and portable. It was very easy for me to get it to the field. The weight was barely noticeable adding it to my flight kit. It's also very, very powerful compared to a tiny whoop or any other whoop variants. It's really responsive as well. Again, the lightweight and the high power motors just make it a really, really interesting thing to fly. Another positive I found was it's very bottom heavy, so most of the time you crash, it tends to right itself up. Combine all of this with the fact that it supports Betaflight and all Betaflight features. It's upgradable and it's extremely cost effective. It's a great way to get in the hobby. That being said, though, there were a few things that I wish were just executed on a bit better. Number one, the camera. There's not a lot of dynamic range. It's extremely hard to fly in uneven lighting conditions. It was overcast the 2 days I went to test it out, and I found that whenever the center of the camera would dip above the horizon towards the sky, I'd lose all texture and all reference on the ground. The ground just became a big giant black blob that I really couldn't focus on or get my bearings. The other thing also is the VTX, just because it's a straight antenna, you don't get a lot of range, about 30-40 meters out, and it really starts to suffer. Above everything, the one thing I found really challenging is trying to fly it in any sort of wind. Because it's so lightweight, it just gets completely blown around. Unlike smaller quads, like say 3-inch quads, that have some sort of weight to it, because this is a plastic frame and everything is just so lightweight, smallest gust of wind just takes it away. I did a test where I climbed to about 10-15 meters above the ground and just cut the throttle, and the drift when I fell was about what you would expect with a glider. Another thing to note is the stock batteries that it came with, the two 1S 300 milliamp hour high voltage lipos. They lasted about 20 to 30 seconds before I started getting low voltage alerts through the OSD, and maybe another 10 or 15 seconds before I started to see critical land now alerts. I'm not sure if they need to be broken in or if it's because it was fairly cold out when I was flying, but I was extremely disappointed in the performance of those batteries. So I would strongly suggest, if you are going to get one, to get the XT30 version. Just at least that way you have better access to higher quality batteries. Another thing to note is after about 10 test flights, I've noticed a lot of wear on the battery holders, specifically the edges. It looks like it's likely going to break there. I think it would have been a fantastic addition to have some sort of underplate or something to just protect the battery, specifically when it skids off the ground. It does scrape up that plastic, and I'm fairly certain in a few flights that's likely going to break. The last thing I want to say about the Beta75X is that a lot of people are viewing it as a brushless tiny whoop replacement. Personally, I do not think that's the case. I think it's got way too much power to be used indoors, especially if you're someone that's new to FPV like I am. One thing I did notice is there's about a 3 to 5% throttle window that you need to keep it within to hover or to fall or to climb very aggressively towards the ceiling. So flying it indoors, I found myself not really having fun, but more being very nervous and just really hyper focused, trying to make sure I didn't, accelerate too fast or throw it into a wall or end up breaking something. So all of that being said, would I recommend this? Yes and no. I'd say for under $150 US, it's a great buy. It's a fun little quad. It's excellent to fly if you have perfect conditions outdoors with absolutely no wind, or if you like flying around in parkades in short little loops doing some mini races. But depending on your skill level, that money might be spent being put towards parts for a smaller 2 or 3 inch quad. I feel that a 2 or 3 inch quad has a bit more weight to it, so it tends to fly a bit more stable. Again, it's not an indoor quad, but neither is this in my opinion. So all in all, the Beta 75X, it's a great buy. It's a fun little quad. But depending on your skill level, you might consider going with something else. One last thing I want to add is, in addition to buying the Beta 75X, I also ordered a balance board from BetaFPV. And what I noticed is it came from factory with a short on the board. As soon as I plugged in one of the batteries to charge them, it got instantaneously hot. So I instantly unplugged it and decided to just test the resistance of the board with my multimeter. As you can see here, there is next to no resistance between any of the leads on the board, even from the banana plugs. The 0.3 to 0.5 microohms you're seeing are actually as a result of the resistance from the probes themselves. I did reach out to BetaFPV for comment, but at the time of making this video, I hadn't received anything back. So just a warning, I do not recommend buying balance boards from BetaFPV. That's it for this week. If you like these videos so far, please hit that subscribe button. You can also find me on Facebook at Nibz FPV. Thanks for watching.